It wasn't a loud noise. Just a quick slap. But that sound changed everything. Dr. Vance hit Lavern across the face. Right there in the hospital room. Right there while she was in labor with her baby. "Stop being so dramatic," the doctor snapped. Lavern's cheek stung. Her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't believe what just happened. The nurses froze. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. That's when the door opened. Kim stood there, soaking wet from the rain outside. His expensive suit was ruined. But that didn't matter now. What mattered was what he just saw. What mattered was the red mark on his wife's face. What mattered was the man who put it there. Dr. Vance turned around, annoyed. "Who are you? You can't be in here." Then he stopped. His face went white. He finally realized who was standing in that doorway. Kim didn't yell. He didn't run at the doctor. He just stared. And that quiet stare was scarier than any shouting could ever be. Now, before we see what happens next, and trust me, what Kim does to this doctor will shock you, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button. We share stories like this one all the time, and you don't want to miss them. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's get back to the story. The bed next to her was empty. Kim had already left for his big meeting. He had important business stuff to deal with. Things Lavern didn't ask too many questions about. On her nightstand was a cup of tea and a pretty flower. That was Kim's way. He didn't say much, but he showed he cared. Lavern tried to get up but felt a sharp pain in her back. It had been hurting for days, but today was different. Worse. She looked at her phone. Should she call Kim? His meeting was a big deal. Could change their future. Don't bother him, she told herself. It's probably nothing. She drank her tea and tried to ignore the pain. But by 9:30, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Still, she didn't call Kim. She called her sister Maya instead. "How far apart are the pains?" Maya asked right away. "Maybe 15 minutes. But it's probably just those fake contractions. The doctor said first babies are usually late. Girl, get yourself to that hospital right now. I'm on my way over. I don't want to make a big deal if it's nothing." Lavern. You're married to the scariest man in New York, and you're worried about bothering people? Call your husband. Lavern promised she would. But after hanging up, she just stared at Kim's number. If she called, he'd drop everything and come. And if it was a false alarm? She sent a text instead, having some back pain. Probably nothing. Going to get checked. Love you. No answer. He was probably busy with his meeting. When another pain hit, stronger than before, she called Kim's driver. "Minessio, can you take me to Mount Sinai Hospital?" "Of course, Mrs. Kim." "Should I call Mr. Kim?" "No, it's just to be safe." "I'm sure it's nothing." But as they drove through rainy Manhattan, the pains got worse. By the time they reached the hospital, she could barely talk. Minessio looked worried. "Let me call him. He'd want to know." "He's in an important meeting," Lavern said, trying to smile. "I'll call him if it's real." She didn't know how wrong things would go. Didn't know that by the time she needed to call him, it would be too late. The VIP area of Mount Sinai was quiet and private. A special elevator took Lavern straight to the 7th floor. This was where rich people had their babies, away from everyone else. "Dr. Vance will see you soon," a nurse said, helping Lavern into a hospital gown. "He's the best doctor in the city." Lavern nodded. "My husband will come when his meeting is done." Something flashed across the nurse's face. Fear? Respect? Both? Lavern was used to that. Everyone knew who Kim was. The chairman of the GM Ryong network. A powerful man with a scary reputation. But to her, he was just the man who made her tea and read stories to their baby. Another pain hit her hard. When it passed, she checked her phone. 10% battery. She'd forgotten to charge it. She sent a quick text, "At hospital. Might be real labor. Please come when you can." The message sent just as her phone beeped. 9% battery. She tried calling, but got voicemail. 8% battery. She plugged in her charger and prayed it would last. Dr. Vance walked in. Tall, gray hair, fancy watch. He barely looked at her as he checked her chart. "Mrs. Kim. I hear you're having some discomfort." The way he said it made her feel stupid. Like she was making a big deal over nothing. "I've been having contractions for 3 hours. They're getting worse and closer together." He said, still not looking at her. First-time moms often think false contractions are the real thing. "Let's check." His exam was quick and cold. When he finished, he stepped back looking bored. "You're only 2 centimeters. This could be false labor. Nothing to worry about." Another pain grabbed her, worse than before. Lavern gasped, holding the bed rails. "This doesn't feel false." Dr. Vance sighed and checked his watch. "The nurses will watch you for an hour. If nothing changes, you can go home." "But..." "Mrs. Kim," he snapped. "I have real emergencies to deal with. You're not special just because of who your husband is." That hurt, but the pain was too bad to argue. "Can you at least check the baby?" "Something feels wrong." "The baby is fine. Relax." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Is your husband coming?" Lavern could tell what he was really asking. "He's in a meeting. He'll be here soon." Dr. Vance nodded and left. Lavern checked her phone. 7% battery. She called Kim again. Voicemail again. For 30 minutes, the pain just got worse. The contractions were 8 minutes apart now. The nurses checked the machines but didn't seem worried. "First babies take time," one said cheerfully. "Could be hours yet." 6% battery. Lavern tried calling again. Then Maya. No answer from either. 5% battery. Another contraction hit, so bad she cried out. This time, something felt different. "I think my water broke," she told the nurses. One checked and nodded. "I'll call Dr. Vance." When the doctor came back, he was clearly annoyed. "Your water breaking doesn't mean active labor," he said after checking her again. "You're still only 3 centimeters. "Something feels wrong," Lavern insisted. "The pressure, it's like she's pushing down." Dr. Vance glared at her. "I'm the doctor here. If you keep questioning me, maybe you need a different doctor." The message was clear: stop bothering him, or he'd leave. 4% battery. Lavern tried Kim again. Voicemail. "Kim, please. I need you. Something's wrong. The doctor won't listen. Please come." She hung up just as another pain hit. This one was different, overwhelming. She screamed. Dr. Vance came back, angry now. "Mrs. Kim. Control yourself. You're disturbing everyone." 3% battery. "Please," Lavern gasped when the pain eased. "Please listen. Something's wrong. I know it. Nothing's wrong except you overreacting." "Check her again," a nurse cut in. "Her contractions are 4 minutes apart now." Dr. Vance glared but did as she said. His face changed. You're 7 centimeters. This is going much faster than normal. Another pain hit. Lavern reached out blindly, grabbing Dr. Vance's sleeve. Let go of me, he snapped, pulling away. Please, Lavern begged, not letting go. Something's wrong. 2% battery. That's when it happened. Dr. Vance yanked his arm back and slapped her face. Control yourself, he hissed. 1% battery. Lavern's phone died. The screen went black just as the door opened. And Kim stepped into the room. 6 hours before the slap that would change everything, Kim Hae-jin sat in the private back room of John Grow Barbecue in Manhattan's Koreatown. The meat sizzled on the grill in the middle of the table. The room smelled like sesame oil and garlic. Metal chopsticks clinked against small plates. But underneath all that normal restaurant stuff was something else. Tension. The kind you can almost taste. Kim wore a dark blue suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He sat with perfect posture. His face didn't show any emotion. But his eyes missed nothing. That's how he'd stayed alive all these years. That's how he become the chairman of the Jeomryong network. Across from him sat 3 men. The one in the middle was Park Young-ho. He was older than Kim by maybe 15 years. Gray hair at his temples. A smile that reminded Kim of politicians on TV. Fake. Practiced. His eyes were cold though. Cold and calculating. The 2 men on either side of Park didn't have names as far as Kim was concerned. They were just muscle. Bodyguards. Their hands never strayed far from their jackets. Kim knew what was under those jackets. He had his own gun, of course. Small, tucked against his ankle. But he hoped nobody would be stupid enough to start shooting in the middle of a Korean barbecue restaurant at noon on a Tuesday. The deal is simple, Park said, pushing a folder across the table. Your ships, our distribution network. We split the profits 60/40ths. Kim didn't touch the folder. 70/30ths, he said. My ships. My risk. Park's smile didn't waver, but something flashed in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or respect. Hard to tell. 65/35, Park countered. And we handle security on the docks. Kim picked up his cup of tea and took a small sip. Buying time. Thinking. His sources had warned him that Park was planning something. This meeting wasn't just about a shipping deal. It was about territory. About power. About who controlled what in New York City. If this deal went through, parts of Kim's business would become legitimate. Taxes paid. Paperwork filed. That's what Lavern wanted. What their baby needed. A father who didn't have to look over his shoulder every minute of every day. I'll consider 65/35ths, Kim said finally. But my people stay on the docks. Park chuckled. You don't trust me, Kim? I don't trust anyone. Wise policy. Park nodded to one of his men, who started grilling more meat. Acting like this was just a friendly business lunch. Like they weren't all armed and dangerous. Like they weren't discussing millions of dollars of cargo moving through New York Harbor. Kim's phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it. In meetings like this, looking at your phone was a sign of weakness. Of distraction. And Kim never showed weakness. Not in front of men like Park. Your wife is due soon, isn't she? Park asked casually, picking up a piece of grilled beef with his chopsticks. Kim's face stayed perfectly neutral. But inside, a warning bell went off. How did Park know about Lavern's due date? Why was he asking? A few weeks, Kim said. Park nodded. Children change everything, he said. Make you think about the future. About what kind of world they'll grow up in. He looked meaningfully around the restaurant. About what kind of business they'll inherit. The threat was veiled but clear. Park was reminding him what was at stake. Not just money. Not just power. But family. Kim's phone vibrated again. He glanced at his pocket. Then back at Park. The older man was watching him, looking for any sign of distraction. Any crack in Kim's famous control. You should get that, Park said, smiling. Could be important. It was a test. If Kim looked at his phone, he showed weakness. If he ignored it, well, what if it really was important? What if it was Lavern? Kim made his choice. He kept his eyes on Park and reached for his teacup again. Nothing that can't wait. Park nodded, seemingly satisfied. One of his men placed the contract on the table between them. Pages of legal language that basically said, "We're working together now. We're partners. We trust each other." All lies, of course. But necessary lies. The kind that business was built on. Kim took the pen they offered. He flipped through the pages, reading quickly but carefully. His phone buzzed again. Third time. His jaw tightened slightly, but he kept reading. Kept ignoring it. But something in his gut was twisting now. A feeling. The same feeling that had saved his life more than once over the years. The feeling that something was wrong. He was about to sign when the door to the private room burst open. Everyone froze. Park's men reached inside their jackets. Kim tensed, ready to move if guns appeared. But the man in the doorway wasn't a threat. At least not to Kim. It was Dongmin, his head of security. 6'3", built like a tank, and usually calm as a stone. But not now. Now there was something in his eyes that Kim had never seen before. Panic. "Sir," Dongmin said, breathing hard like he'd been running. He held up his hands to show Park's men he wasn't reaching for a weapon. "Sir, it's your wife." 2 words. That's all it took. Your wife. And just like that, everything else in the room disappeared. The contract. The deal. The millions of dollars. The potential threat from Park. All of it became background noise. Kim stood up immediately. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Didn't even look at Park or his men again. He simply walked toward the door where Dongmin was waiting. "Kim," Park called after him, his voice sharp with surprise and something like anger. "We're not finished here." Kim stopped. Turned slightly. Not all the way around, just enough to see Park from the corner of his eye. "Yes," he said quietly. "We are." And then he was gone, following Dongmin through the restaurant and out to the street where a black SUV was waiting, engine running. "What happened?" Kim asked as they got into the back seat. The rain was coming down hard now, drumming on the roof of the car. "She's been trying to call you," Dongmin said. "She's at Mount Sinai. In labor." Kim's stomach dropped. "But she's not due for 2 more weeks. Babies come when they come, sir." Kim pulled out his phone. 6 missed calls. All from Lavern. And 1 voicemail. He pressed play and put the phone to his ear. "Kim, please," Lavern's voice was strained, scared. "I need you. Something's wrong. The doctor won't listen. Please come." He'd never heard her sound like that before. Never heard her afraid. Lavern was the strongest person he knew. The bravest. For her to sound that frightened. How long ago was this? He demanded. "Last call came in about 40 minutes ago," Dongmin said. "Min says he took her to the hospital almost 3 hours ago now. She's been trying to reach you the whole time. 3 hours. 180 minutes. 10,800 seconds where his wife had needed him and he had chosen business over her. Guilt twisted in his chest, cold and sharp. He'd promised to be there. Promised he wouldn't let her do this alone. And now. Her phone is going straight to voicemail now, Dongmin added. Battery might be dead. Kim stared out at the rain-soaked streets as the driver navigated through midday Manhattan traffic. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Faster, he said to the driver. Get us there faster. The car accelerated, weaving between yellow cabs and delivery trucks. Kim tried Lavern's phone again. Straight to voicemail, just like Dongmin said. He'd walked away from the most important business deal of his life without hesitation. But it still might not be fast enough. He still might be too late. I told Min SEO to call if anything changed, Dongmin said. He hasn't called. That could be good or bad, Kim said quietly. Sir? Either nothing has changed, or... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Dongmin understood. They were passing through Midtown now, the traffic getting worse. Kim's hands clenched into fists as they stopped at yet another red light. Sir, the driver said, I can try to take some side streets. Might be faster. Do it, Kim ordered. As they turned off the main avenue, Kim found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, praying. Not to any god in particular. Just a general plea to whatever might be listening. Let her be okay. Let the baby be okay. Let me get there in time. Dongmin's phone rang. He answered it immediately. Minaseo? Yes, we're on our way. What's happening? Kim watched Dongmin's face, looking for any clue. But his head of security was too well trained to show emotion. I understand, Dongmin said. We're about 10 minutes out. Stay with her. He hung up and turned to Kim. She's in active labor. Moving fast. The doctor is with her, but Min SEO says something seems off. The staff is tense. What does that mean? Something seems off. He doesn't know. Just a feeling. You know Min SEO. He doesn't overreact. No, Min SEO didn't overreact. Like most of Kim's inner circle, the driver was ex-military. Calm under pressure. Not given to panic or exaggeration. If Min SEO said something was off, something was off. Kim felt the familiar coldness settle over him. The calculating focus that had gotten him through firefights and betrayals and negotiations gone wrong. Lavern called it his business face. The mask that hid whatever he was really feeling. If anyone has hurt her. He said softly. Sir, Dongmin said, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But Kim was already thinking through scenarios. Already planning responses. Already deciding what lines could and couldn't be crossed. There were rules in his world. Lines even he wouldn't cross. Violence was a last resort, not a first instinct. That's what separated him from the thugs and gangsters that populated the stories people told about him. But if someone had hurt Lavern, if someone had put his wife and child in danger, then the rules would change. The car swerved suddenly, taking a sharp right turn to avoid a delivery truck double parked in their path. Kim grabbed the door handle to steady himself. Sorry, sir, the driver said. Construction ahead. Taking another detour. Kim checked his watch. 10 minutes had become 15. 15 would become 20 if they hit any more obstacles. Stop the car, he ordered. The driver pulled over immediately. They were on 58th Street. Still 15 blocks from the hospital. Sir? Dongmin asked. We're walking, Kim said, already opening the door. The traffic isn't moving. We can go faster on foot. But the rain. I don't care about the rain. Dong-min nodded and got out his side. The driver stayed with the car, ready to catch up when traffic cleared. They set off at a fast walk, almost a jog. The rain was coming down hard, soaking through Kim's expensive suit within seconds. People hurried past under umbrellas, giving the two men a wide berth. Maybe it was their pace. Maybe it was the look on Kim's face. 6 blocks to go, Dong-min said after they'd been walking for about 10 minutes. Kim's phone rang. He grabbed it immediately, hoping it was Lavern somehow. But the screen showed a different name, Park Young-ho. He silenced it without answering. Whatever Park wanted could wait. Whatever threats or demands or negotiations the older man had in mind, they meant nothing right now. 5 blocks. 4. They were getting close. Kim's mind kept cycling through the same thoughts. She needed him, and he wasn't there. She was afraid, and he wasn't there. She was in pain, and he wasn't there. 3 blocks. 2. They could see the hospital now, its modern glass and steel structure rising above the surrounding buildings. I promised her, Kim said suddenly, surprising even himself by speaking out loud. Sir? Dong-min glanced at him, rain dripping from his short-cropped hair. I promised Lavern I'd be there. That she wouldn't have to do this alone. Dong-min didn't respond. What could he say? There was no comfort to offer, no reassurance that would matter. 1 block to go. They were jogging now, pushing through the rain, ignoring the startled looks from pedestrians. And then they were there. The hospital entrance looming before them. Kim didn't slow down. He strode through the automatic doors, water streaming from his ruined suit, his face set in that impassive mask that hid the storm raging inside him. The security guard at the desk took one look at him and stepped aside without asking for ID. Smart man. Dong-min flashed some kind of badge or card that got them through the next checkpoint without stopping. Then they were in the elevator, rising swiftly toward the VIP floor. Kim stared at his reflection in the polished metal doors. He looked like what he was, a dangerous man at the edge of control. The elevator doors slid open. The VIP maternity wing was eerily quiet. No nurses at the station. No sounds except the hum of fluorescent lights and the squeak of his wet shoes on the polished floor. Kim moved down the hallway, following the signs toward room 404. Dong-min a step behind. As they approached, Kim heard something that made his blood run cold. A scream. Lavern's scream. And then a man's voice, angry and dismissive, "Control yourself." Kim broke into a run. 3 doors away. 2. He reached the door to room 404 just as he heard the sound. That sick, wet crack of skin against skin. The sound of someone being struck. He pushed the door open. And he saw everything. Lavern, his beautiful, brave Lavern, with her hand pressed to her reddening cheek. Tears streaming down her face. The doctor standing over her, annoyed, adjusting his sleeve. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The doctor turned, irritated by the draft from the open door. Excuse me, this is a sterile environment. And then he saw who was standing there. Kim didn't move. Didn't speak. Just took in the scene before him. The mark on Lavern's face. The fear in her eyes. The arrogance of the man who dared to put his hands on her. Something cold and terrible settled in Kim's chest. A decision. A certainty. This doctor had just made the biggest mistake of his life. And he didn't even know it yet. The clock on the wall of room 404 moved so slowly that Lavern wondered if it was broken. Each minute stretched out like an hour. Each contraction felt worse than the last. After Dr. Vance left, Lavern tried to get comfortable on the hospital bed. The sheets were stiff and smelled too clean, like chemicals. The machines beeped around her. But worst of all was the quiet. The VIP floor was so quiet she could hear the rain hitting the windows. She checked her phone again. Still no message from Kim. She tried calling again, but her battery was getting lower. 6% now. The charger wasn't working well, maybe the outlet was bad. One of the nurses came in to check the monitors. She was young, probably new. Her name tag said Emily. "How are we feeling?" Emily asked, not really looking at Lavern. "The pain is getting worse," Lavern said. "And something feels wrong. Different than what the books described." Emily glanced at her, then back at the monitor. "First baby, right? Everything feels wrong because it's all new. Try to relax." That was what everyone kept saying. Relax. Like she could just turn off the pain with a switch. "Could you maybe call Dr. Vance back?" Lavern asked. "I really think something's happening faster than normal." Emily's smile got tight. "Dr. Vance is very busy. He'll be back in." She checked her watch, "About 40 minutes for your next check." 40 minutes seems like a long time when Lavern stopped as another contraction hit. This one grabbed her whole body. She couldn't talk, couldn't think, could only hold on to the bed rail and breathe through it. When it passed, Emily was just standing there, watching her. "That looked strong," she said, finally sounding a little concerned. "They're getting closer together too," Lavern gasped. "Maybe 7 or 8 minutes now." Emily frowned and checked the monitor again. "I'll make a note of it. Try to rest between contractions." After she left, Lavern tried calling Kim again. Voicemail. 5% battery left. "Kim, please call me back," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm at the hospital and I just really need you here, okay?" She hung up and lay back against the pillows. She wasn't the type to panic. She'd always been the calm one, the rational one. When she first met Kim at that gallery opening in Brooklyn 3 years ago, that's what had drawn him to her calmness in the chaos of the New York art scene. But right now, she wasn't calm. Right now, she was scared. Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Lavern bit her lip to keep from crying out. She didn't want the nurses thinking she was being dramatic. Dr. Vance already thought she was overreacting. When the pain eased, she reached for the call button. She pressed it and waited. And waited. No one came. She pressed it again. Still nothing. The minutes ticked by. The rain kept hitting the windows. The machines kept beeping. And Lavern was still alone. Finally, the door opened. But it wasn't a nurse. It was Dr. Vance, looking annoyed. "Mrs. Kim," he said, checking her chart. "The nurse tells me you're experiencing stronger contractions." "Yes," Lavern said, relieved someone was finally listening. "They're closer together now, and the pain is different." "Different how?" He still wasn't really looking at her. "More pressure. Like she's pushing down." Dr. Vance sighed and put the chart down. "Let's take a look." His examination was rough and impersonal. Lavern winced, but didn't complain. She just wanted him to understand that something was happening. "You're at 3 centimeters, he said when he finished. "Still early labor. But the contractions are perfectly normal," he cut her off. First-time mothers always think things are happening faster than they are. The way he said it made Lavern feel stupid. Like she was making a big deal over nothing. Maybe she was. Maybe this was just normal and the books she'd read didn't prepare her for how bad it would feel. "I'm going to check on my other patients," Dr. Vance said, moving toward the door. "The nurses will monitor you." "When will you be back?" Lavern asked, trying not to sound desperate. Dr. Vance checked his watch. I have a scheduled C-section in an hour. After that. An hour? Lavern couldn't keep the panic out of her voice. But what if something happens before then? Nothing is going to happen, he said, his voice cold. You're in early labor. It could be hours before you're ready to deliver. Before Lavern could say anything else, he was gone. The door closed behind him with a soft click. She reached for her phone again. 4% battery. She tried Kim. Voicemail. She tried Maya. No answer. She tried Minesio. He picked up on the second ring. Mrs. Kim. How are you feeling? Is the baby coming? Minesio, Lavern said, her voice shaking. I can't reach Kim. The doctor won't listen to me. Something's wrong. I can feel it. I'll try to call Mr. Kim, Minesio said, sounding worried now. And I'll come up to your room. Another contraction hit, so strong that Lavern dropped the phone. By the time it passed and she could pick it up again, the call had ended. And her battery was down to 3%. She tried calling Minesio back, but her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't hit the right buttons. And then another contraction came, even stronger than before. This time, she couldn't hold back. She screamed. The door opened quickly, and both nurses rushed in. What's going on? The older one asked, moving to check the monitors. Contraction, Lavern gasped when she could speak again. Really bad. Emily checked the monitors. They are getting closer together. About 5 minutes now. And I think my water just broke, Lavern said, feeling the wetness beneath her. The older nurse checked and nodded. I'll page Dr. Vance. While they waited, the older nurse adjusted Lavern's position and tried to make her comfortable. Emily just stood there, looking nervous. Should I try a different doctor? Lavern asked. If Dr. Vance is busy. The older nurse gave her a sharp look. Dr. Vance is the head of obstetrics. He's the best we have. But he doesn't seem to be taking this seriously, Lavern said. Mrs. Kim, the nurse's voice was firm but not unkind. I understand you're scared. But Dr. Vance has delivered thousands of babies. He knows what he's doing. Before Lavern could respond, the door opened and Dr. Vance walked in. He didn't look happy to be called back. What now? He asked. Her water broke, the older nurse reported. Contractions 5 minutes apart and strengthening. Dr. Vance sighed heavily and checked Lavern again. This time, his examination was even rougher, almost painful. Lavern bit her lip to keep from crying out. 4 centimeters, he announced. Still not active labor. This could go on for hours yet. But the pain is normal, he cut her off again. I have another patient who is actually ready to deliver. I can't keep coming in here every time you feel a twinge. Lavern felt tears in her eyes. Why wouldn't he listen? Why was he being so cruel? Please, she said, hating how small her voice sounded. Can you at least check the baby? Make sure everything's okay? Dr. Vance's face hardened. The fetal monitor shows the baby is fine. You need to calm down and stop being so dramatic. He turned to the nurses. Keep monitoring her. Page me if she reaches 6 centimeters, not before. He walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. And keep the noise down. We have other patients on this floor who don't need to hear screaming. After he left, Lavern couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They slid down her cheeks as another contraction built. The older nurse saw and came to her side. Try to breathe through it, she said, her voice gentler now. Like they taught you in your classes. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Lavern tried, but the pain was overwhelming. It felt like her body was being torn in half. When it finally passed, she was gasping for air. "Something's wrong," she insisted. "It shouldn't hurt this much, this fast." The nurse patted her hand. "Every labor is different. Try to rest between contractions." Both nurses left after that, promising to check on her soon. Lavern lay there, feeling more alone than she ever had in her life. Her phone was down to 2% battery. She tried Kim one more time. When his voicemail picked up, she couldn't hold back the fear in her voice anymore. "Kim, please," she begged. "I need you. Something's wrong. The doctor won't listen. Please come." She ended the call and put the phone on the side table, hoping it would last until Kim checked his messages. The next contraction came faster than expected. Only 3 minutes after the last one. This time, Lavern couldn't hold back. She screamed again, louder than before. The door opened, but it wasn't the nurses. It was Dr. Vance, and he looked furious. "What did I just say about keeping quiet?" he snapped. "I'm sorry," Lavern gasped. "But they're coming faster now." 3 minutes apart. Dr. Vance looked skeptical but checked her anyway. His face changed. "You're at 7 centimeters, he said, sounding surprised. "This is progressing much faster than expected." "That's what I've been trying to tell you," Lavern said, relief flooding through her. Finally, he was listening. But Dr. Vance didn't look happy about being wrong. If anything, he looked annoyed. "I need to cancel my other appointment. The nurses will prep you for delivery." He turned to leave, but another contraction hit Lavern. This one was different, overwhelming, all-consuming. She reached out blindly, desperate for something to hold onto, something to ground her through the pain. Her hand caught Dr. Vance's sleeve, wrinkling the expensive fabric. "Let go of me," he snapped, trying to pull away. But Lavern couldn't let go. The pain was too much. She gripped tighter, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she begged. "It hurts so much. Something's wrong." That's when it happened. Dr. Vance jerked his arm free and, with the back of his hand, slapped Lavern across the face. "Control yourself," he hissed. The shock of it was almost worse than the pain. Lavern's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief. Had he really just hit her? Here, in a hospital? While she was in labor? The nurses froze. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And that's when the door opened. Through her tears, through her shock, Lavern saw him standing there. Kim. Soaking wet from the rain. His suit ruined. His face a mask of perfect, terrible calm. Their eyes met across the room. In that moment, Lavern felt so many things at once. Relief that he was finally here. Shame that he had to see her like this. Fear about what might happen next. Because she knew her husband. Knew what he was capable of. Knew the violence that lived just beneath his carefully controlled surface. And Dr. Vance had just crossed a line that no one crossed with Kim Hae-jin. He had touched his wife. Dr. Vance turned, annoyed by the interruption. "Excuse me, this is a sterile environment." The words died in his throat as he realized who was standing in the doorway. Lavern saw the moment recognition hit him. Saw the color drain from his face. Saw the fear replace the arrogance in his eyes. Kim didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at the red mark on Lavern's cheek, then at the doctor's hand, then back at Lavern's face. And in that silence, in that perfect stillness, Lavern knew that everything was about to change. Kim's shoes squeaked on the polished hospital floor. They were still wet from the rain. Everything about him was wet, his expensive suit, his hair, even the inside of his pockets. But he didn't care. All he cared about was getting to room 404. Getting to Lavern. The security guard at the VIP entrance took one look at Kim's face and stepped aside without a word. Smart man. Nobody who worked in New York for more than a year wouldn't recognize Kim Hae-jin. And nobody with any sense would get in his way when he looked like that. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Kim watched the numbers light up one by one. 3, 4, 5, 6, just one more floor. His heart pounded in his ears, louder than the soft elevator music. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The same way he could feel when a business deal was about to go bad. The same way he could sense when someone was lying to him. Something was very, very wrong. Finally, the doors opened. The VIP maternity floor was weirdly quiet. No nurses at their station. No doctors walking around. Just the soft hum of the lights and the distant beeping of machines. Kim moved down the hallway with Dongmin right behind him. Room 401. Room 402. Room 403. Then he heard it. A scream. Lavern's scream. The sound cut through him like a knife. And then a man's voice, angry and sharp, "Control yourself." Kim broke into a run. He reached room 404 just in time to see it happen. The doctor, tall, gray-haired, expensive watch, pulling his arm away from Lavern. The back of his hand connecting with her face. The wet crack of the slap. Lavern's head snapping to the side. Time stopped. For one endless second, Kim couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. He just stood there, watching as Lavern's hand slowly rose to her cheek. Watching the red mark bloom on her skin. Watching the tears stream down her face. And then the rage came. Not hot and explosive like most people would feel. But cold. Ice cold. The kind of rage that doesn't make you lose control, it gives you more of it. The kind that slows everything down and makes every detail crystal clear. Kim stepped into the room. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. The nurses in the corner froze like statues. They recognized him immediately. They knew what was coming. But the doctor didn't. He was still facing Lavern, still muttering about hysterical patients and wasting his time. He didn't notice the change in the room. Didn't feel the danger that had just walked through the door. "Excuse me, this is a sterile environment," he started to say as he turned around, annoyed by the draft from the open door. The words died in his throat when he saw Kim standing there. Wet. Silent. Deadly calm. Recognition flickered in the doctor's eyes. Not direct recognition, they'd never met before. But the kind of recognition that comes from reputation. From whispered stories. From warnings. Kim didn't look at him. Not yet. Instead, he walked straight to Lavern. His face softened as he reached her side. Gently, so gently, he touched her unmarked cheek. His fingers were cold from the rain, but she leaned into his touch like it was the warmest thing in the world. "Ne sarang," he whispered in Korean. "My love. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm here now." Lavern's eyes were full of tears, but also relief. And something else, worry. Not for herself, but for what might happen next. Because she knew him. Knew what lived inside him. What he was capable of. "Kim," she whispered. "The baby." "Shoo," he said softly. "Everything's going to be okay." Only then did he turn to face the doctor. The softness vanished from his face. The warmth drained from his eyes. What remained was something ancient and terrible. Something that had kept Kim alive through a life most people couldn't imagine. The doctor took a step back. His face had gone pale. His hand, the one that had struck Lavern, twitched at his side. "Mr. Kim," he said, his voice suddenly respectful. Suddenly afraid. "I apologize for the confusion. Your wife was becoming hysterical, endangering herself and the baby. A mild shock was necessary to..." "A mild shock," Kim repeated. His voice was quiet. So quiet everyone in the room had to strain to hear it. But somehow, it filled the entire space. The doctor nodded quickly. "Yes, a standard medical technique in certain situations. I assure you, I had your wife's best interests." "Did you just touch my wife?" The question hung in the air like a knife. It wasn't really a question. It was a verdict. A sentence. Dr. Vance's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. His eyes darted to the door, looking for a way out. But Dong-min was standing there, blocking the exit. "Mr. Kim," he finally managed, his voice cracking. "Your wife was being hysterical. I had to. Show me your hands." The command was so soft, so calm, that it took the doctor a moment to understand. "Excuse me?" "Your hands," Kim said, still in that terrifyingly quiet voice. "Show them to me. Now." Trembling, Dr. Vance held out his hands. They were shaking. The right one, the one he'd used to slap Lavern, had a slight redness across the palm. Kim looked at those hands for a long, long moment. Hands that were supposed to heal. Hands that were supposed to help bring his child safely into the world. Hands that had just struck the only person he truly loved. And then, Kim smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that makes your blood run cold. The kind that says, "I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to do something much, much worse." Dr. Vance took another step back, bumping into the medical equipment behind him. Something beeped loudly in the silence. "Mr. Kim," he tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. "Let's discuss this professionally. I understand you're upset, but in my medical judgment." "Your judgment," Kim said, the smile still on his face. "Let's talk about your judgment." He reached slowly into his pocket. Not for a weapon, Kim didn't need weapons for this kind of destruction. He pulled out his phone instead. Still wet from the rain, but working. "Do you know who I am, Dr. Vance?" he asked, typing something on the screen. The doctor swallowed hard. "Yes, of course. You're Kim Hae-jin. A respected businessman." "Businessman," Kim repeated, nodding slightly. "Yes, that's one way to put it." The phone in his hand lit up with an incoming call. Kim answered it but didn't speak right away. He just looked at Dr. Vance, that terrible smile still on his face. "Your hand hit my wife's face," Kim said softly. "Do you know what that means?" Dr. Vance was shaking now, little tremors running through his whole body. "It was a medical intervention, not a..." "It means your hand doesn't belong to you anymore," Kim interrupted. "It belongs to me now. Your career. Your reputation. Your future. All mine." He finally spoke into the phone. "Director Park?" "Yes, it's Kim. Mount Sinai Hospital. Dr. Richard Vance." A pause. "Everything. All of it. Now." He hung up and put the phone back in his pocket. His eyes never left Dr. Vance's face. "What did you just do?" the doctor asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I called in your loans," Kim said simply. "All of them. The mortgage on your Hamptons house. The investment property in Florida. The private practice you've been trying to set up. The gambling debts you think nobody knows about." Dr. Vance's face went from pale to gray. "That's not possible. You can't." "I just did," Kim said. You'll get the calls from the banks within the hour. They'll want full payment. Immediately. Another contraction hit Lavern. She gasped, gripping the bed rail. Kim was at her side instantly, holding her hand, helping her breathe through it. When it passed, he turned back to Dr. Vance, who looked like he might pass out. You're finished at this hospital, Kim continued, his voice still deadly calm. The board will receive evidence of your medical technique within the next 10 minutes. Your license will be reviewed. Your reputation, well. He shrugged slightly. Who would trust a doctor who hits pregnant women? You can't do this, Dr. Vance said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Just fear. Just the growing realization of how completely his life was about to change. I already have, Kim said. He looked at his watch. You have exactly 60 seconds to leave this room. After that, security will escort you out of the building. A police report will be filed. Assault charges. My lawyers are very good, Dr. Vance. Very thorough. The doctor stood frozen, like he couldn't believe this was happening. 50 seconds, Kim said. Dr. Vance looked around wildly, as if hoping someone would save him. The nurses stared at the floor. Dong-min watched him with cold eyes from the doorway. You can't do this to me, he tried once more. I'm the head of obstetrics. I've worked here for 20 years. I've delivered thousands of babies. 40 seconds, Kim replied. Another contraction hit Lavern, harder than before. She cried out, and Kim's attention immediately shifted back to her. Breathe, Ne Sarung, he said gently. I'm right here. The baby's coming, she gasped. Kim, she's coming now. Someone get a doctor, Kim ordered, not looking away from Lavern. A real doctor. 30 seconds, he added, still not looking at Dr. Vance. The older nurse rushed out of the room. The younger one moved to check the monitors, carefully avoiding eye contact with anyone. Dr. Vance seemed to finally understand that this was really happening. That Kim really had the power to do exactly what he'd promised. Mr. Kim, he tried one last time, his voice breaking. Please. I've devoted my life to medicine. My family, my children. 20 seconds, Kim said. And Dr. Vance? If you ever mention family to me again, after what you did to mine. He let the sentence hang unfinished. He didn't need to complete it. The threat was clear enough. Dr. Vance's shoulders slumped. Defeated. Destroyed. He turned and walked toward the door, his steps unsteady. 10 seconds to spare, Kim remarked as the doctor passed Dong-min, who stepped aside just enough to let him through. You're learning. As Dr. Vance disappeared down the hallway, a new doctor rushed in, younger, female, with kind eyes and a confident manner. Mrs. Kim, she said, moving straight to Lavern. I'm Dr. Chen. Let's get you taken care of. She quickly assessed the situation, checking monitors and examining Lavern with gentle hands. You're fully dilated, she announced. This baby is coming now. Lavern gripped Kim's hand tightly. Don't leave me, she whispered. Never again, he promised, kissing her forehead. I'm right here. I'll always be right here. As Dr. Chen prepared for the delivery, Kim leaned close to Lavern's ear. I took care of him, he said softly. He'll never hurt anyone again. And the truth of that hung in the air between them. Kim hadn't raised a hand against Dr. Vance. Hadn't touched him at all. But he had destroyed him more completely than any physical violence could have. Because Kim Hae-jin understood something most people didn't, real power isn't about force. It's about leverage. It's about knowing exactly where to apply pressure until something breaks. And Dr. Vance was already breaking. Dr. Chen was checking Lavern when another contraction hit. Kim held his wife's hand, letting her squeeze as hard as she needed to. He'd been by her side since Dr. Vance left, but he wasn't done. Not even close. "The baby's definitely coming," Dr. Chen said when the contraction passed. "But we have a little time to get everything ready. First babies usually take their time with the pushing stage." Kim nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. The room felt too crowded now. 2 nurses rushing around, preparing equipment. Dr. Chen checking monitors. Dongmin still standing guard at the door. "I need a moment," Kim said to Lavern, squeezing her hand gently. "Just 1 minute. I'll be right over there." He nodded toward the window. Lavern looked at him with tired eyes. She knew him well enough to understand what was coming next. "Kim," she said softly. "It's over. He's gone." "It's not over," Kim replied, his voice just as quiet. "Not yet." He walked to the window, pulling out his phone. The rain was still coming down outside, but lighter now. The storm was passing. Kim's, however, was just beginning. He dialed a number, keeping his back to the room so the others wouldn't see his face. But Lavern could see his reflection in the window. The coldness in his eyes. The set of his jaw. This was business Kim. The side of him that most people feared. "Director Lee," he said into the phone, his voice flat and emotionless. "That loan we consolidated last week. Dr. Richard Vance." "Yes, the full amount. Call it in. Now. All of it." He hung up without waiting for a response. Behind him, Dr. Chen was saying something about contractions and timing, but Kim wasn't listening. He was already dialing another number. What are you doing?" Kim turned to find Dr. Vance standing in the doorway again. The man looked pale, shaken, but somehow he'd found the courage to come back. Or maybe he was just too shocked to fully process what was happening. "I thought I told you to leave," Kim said. You can't just destroy someone's life because you're angry," Dr. Vance said. His voice was shaking. Kim tilted his head slightly. "Is that what you think this is? Anger?" He walked toward Dr. Vance slowly. Not threateningly, but with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "This isn't anger, Dr. Vance," Kim said. "Anger is hot. Messy. Anger makes mistakes." He stopped a few feet from the doctor. "This is justice." "What are you talking about?" Dr. Vance asked, glancing nervously at Dongmin, who hadn't moved from his position by the door. "That call I just made," Kim explained, his voice still quiet and controlled. "That was to Director Lee of New Century Financial. They own your mortgage. Both of them, actually. The one on your primary residence and the one on your Hamptons vacation home." Dr. Vance's face went from pale to ashen. "That's not possible. My loans are with First Manhattan Bank." "They were," Kim agreed. "Until last week, when they were bought by New Century. Which is owned by Eden Holdings. Which is owned by me." The doctor's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Your loans have been called in, Dr. Vance," Kim continued. "All of them. Payment due immediately. That's millions of dollars. Nobody can just pay that kind of money all at once." "That's the point," Kim said simply. Dr. Vance's legs seemed to give out. He leaned heavily against the doorframe. "You can't do this," he whispered. "You can't just." "I'm not finished," Kim cut him off, already dialing another number on his phone. "Mr. Brennan?" "Yes, the hospital administrator." "I'll wait." The room was silent except for the beeping of Lavern's monitors and the sound of her breathing. Everyone was watching now, Dr. Chen, the nurses, even Dongmin had turned to see what his boss was doing. "Mr. Brennan. This is Kim Hae-jin. You know who I am. Good. I want Dr. Richard Vance removed from my wife's care immediately. I also want him terminated from this hospital within the hour. If that doesn't happen, the endowment I pledged for your new cardiac wing, $15 million, disappears. And I start making calls to every board member about the liability they're now facing from the assault that just occurred in room 404. Kim listened for a moment, his face expressionless. I thought you'd see it my way. He hung up and looked at Dr. Vance, who seemed to be having trouble staying upright. You're done at Mount Sinai, Kim said. Security will be here shortly to escort you out. My career, Dr. Vance said, his voice barely audible. My whole life. Should have thought about that before you put your hands on my wife, Kim replied. If you've been watching this far without subscribing, you're missing out on stories just like this one, stories that stay with you long after they're over. We drop new content regularly, and the only way to make sure you don't miss it is to subscribe. So if this story has you hooked, smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's see what happens next. Behind Kim, Lavern let out a small cry as another contraction hit. He turned immediately, going to her side, taking her hand. For a moment, Dr. Vance was forgotten as Kim focused entirely on his wife. I'm here, he said softly, wiping sweat from her forehead. Breathe with me. Together they worked through the pain, Kim counting softly, Lavern gripping his hand so tight it would probably bruise. Neither of them cared. When the contraction passed, Kim turned back to the doctor, who was still standing in the doorway, watching with a mixture of fear and disbelief. You're still here, Kim observed. It wasn't a question. You've taken everything, Dr. Vance said. My homes, my job, what else do you want? I'm not done, Kim replied simply. He picked up his phone and dialed a third number. Commissioner Reeves? Yes, it's Kim. I need a favor. Dr. Vance's eyes widened. Everyone in New York knew Commissioner Reeves. Head of the state medical board. The man who could end a doctor's career with a single signature. There's a doctor at Mount Sinai. Richard Vance. I need a full investigation. Yes, immediately. Kim paused, listening. Assault on a patient. A pregnant patient. My wife, actually. Another pause. No, I'm not pressing criminal charges. Yet. But I want his license reviewed. And I want every complaint ever filed against him examined. Every single one. Kim's eyes never left Dr. Vance's face as he spoke. He wanted the man to hear every word. To understand exactly how complete his destruction would be. Yes, I think you'll find a pattern, Kim continued. The kind of man who would slap a woman in labor isn't someone who just snapped once. This would be part of who he is. Dr. Vance made a small, broken sound. Like something was collapsing inside him. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. Yes, we'll talk soon. Kim hung up and slipped the phone back into his pocket. He looked at Dr. Vance with cold eyes. That was the last call, he said. Your homes. Your job. Your medical license. All gone. And I never had to raise a hand against you. Why? Dr. Vance whispered. You could have just had me fired. You could have sued. Why all of this? Because you need to understand, Kim said, his voice still eerily calm. Actions have consequences. Especially actions against people I love. 2 security guards appeared behind Dr. Vance. They looked uncomfortable but determined. Dr. Vance, one of them said. We need you to come with us. The doctor didn't fight. He didn't argue. He just looked at Kim with empty eyes. You have 60 seconds to leave this room, Kim said. Leave this hospital. And pray that I don't decide to look deeper into your history. Mr. Kim, please. 50 seconds. Dr. Vance's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him completely. Without another word, he turned and walked away, the security guards following close behind. Kim watched him go, feeling nothing. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just the cold awareness that justice had been served and there was still work to do. Because his wife was in labor. His daughter was coming. And that was all that really mattered. Kim turned back to Lavern. She was watching him with those beautiful brown eyes, and he couldn't tell if she was grateful or frightened or both. You didn't have to destroy him completely, she said softly. Yes, Kim replied. I did. He just slapped me. He didn't. He hurt you, Kim cut her off. While you were vulnerable. While you were bringing our child into the world. He took her hand gently. There's no coming back from that. Not with me. Lavern looked like she wanted to argue, but another contraction hit, stronger than any before. She gasped, her back arching off the bed. Something's changed, she managed to say when she could speak again. Something's different. Dr. Chen checked her quickly. She's right. It's time to push. This baby is ready to meet her parents. Kim's world narrowed to Lavern. To her pain. To her strength. To the miracle that was about to happen. Everything else, Dr. Vance, the phone calls, the revenge, faded into the background. Kim, Lavern whispered. The baby. He was at her side in an instant. What is it? What's wrong? Lavern grabbed his hand and squeezed. Her face contorted with pain. She's coming, Lavern gasped. Kim, she's coming now. Outside the window, lightning split the sky. The storm was reaching its peak. And so was everything else. Dr. Chen moved quickly around the delivery room, checking monitors and giving orders to the nurses in a calm, confident voice. Unlike Dr. Vance, she actually looked at Lavern when she spoke to her. Your contractions are very close together now, she explained. The baby is definitely ready to meet you. Lavern nodded, still shaken from everything that had happened. Kim hadn't left her side since Dr. Vance was escorted out. His hand held hers, steady and warm despite his still damp clothes. A short, balding man in an expensive suit appeared in the doorway, looking like he might throw up. He glanced nervously at Kim before stepping into the room. Mr. and Mrs. Kim, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I'm Thomas Brennan, the hospital administrator. I can't begin to express how deeply sorry we are for what happened. Kim didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed on Lavern, watching for any sign of discomfort. I want to assure you that Dr. Vance has been removed from the hospital premises, Brennan continued. We've already begun a full investigation. And of course, all of your medical expenses will be covered. If there's anything else we can do. There is, Kim said, finally turning to face the man. Get my wife the best care this hospital has to offer. Someone who won't treat her like she's nothing. Someone who will listen to her. That's all I care about right now. Of course, Brennan nodded frantically. Dr. Chen is our finest obstetric specialist. And I've called in our head maternity nurse as well. She's on her way now. As if on cue, a woman appeared behind him. She was in her late 50s, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her scrubs were simple blue, but somehow she wore them with more dignity than Dr. Vance had worn his expensive suit. Her name tag read, Susan Park, RN. I'm already here, she said, gently moving past Brennan. Her voice was warm but firm. Now if you don't mind, Mr. Brennan, we have a baby to deliver. The administrator nodded and backed out of the room, clearly relieved to escape. Susan walked straight to Lavern's bedside. Her eyes were kind but sharp, missing nothing. "Mrs. Kim," she said, taking Lavern's free hand. "I'm Susan Park. I'll be your nurse for the delivery. First, I want to say how sorry I am for what you experienced. That's not what this hospital stands for, and it's certainly not what good healthcare looks like." Lavern felt tears in her eyes again, but these were different. Relief, not fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Now," Susan said, already checking the monitors with practiced efficiency, "let's focus on bringing this baby into the world safely, shall we?" Over the next hour, Susan transformed the cold, sterile room into a place of safety. She dimmed the harsh overhead lights and turned on softer lamps instead. She brought extra pillows to help position Lavern more comfortably. She explained everything Dr. Chen was doing in simple, clear terms. Most importantly, she listened. When Lavern said the pain felt different, Susan didn't dismiss her. She checked. When Lavern felt too hot, then too cold, Susan adjusted the temperature and brought warm blankets. Kim watched her with something like wonder. This was healthcare as it should be. This was someone who understood that her job wasn't just about medical procedures, it was about caring for another human being. "How long have you been a nurse?" Kim asked during a quiet moment between contractions. Susan smiled as she checked Lavern's blood pressure. 32 years. Started right out of nursing school and never wanted to do anything else. "You've probably seen everything," Lavern said, her voice tired but steadier now. "Just about," Susan agreed. "Delivered babies in elevators, taxis, once even in the hospital parking lot. Mothers who cursed their husbands the whole time, mothers who didn't make a sound." Her eyes twinkled. "But every birth is a miracle. Never gets old." Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Lavern gripped Kim's hand, her face contorting with the effort not to scream. "That's it," Susan encouraged, watching the monitor. "You're doing great. Breathe through it. In through your nose, out through your mouth." When it passed, Lavern fell back against the pillows, exhausted. "Is it supposed to hurt this much?" she asked. "It's called labor for a reason," Susan said with gentle humor. "But you're strong. I can tell. Strong women have strong babies." Dr. Chen returned from checking another patient. "Let's see how we're progressing," she said, examining Lavern. 9 centimeters. Almost there. The baby is in perfect position." Susan was adjusting something on the fetal monitor when her expression changed. Just slightly, but Kim noticed. He noticed everything. "What is it?" he asked immediately. Susan and Dr. Chen exchanged a quick glance. "The baby's heart rate dropped a bit during that last contraction," Dr. Chen explained calmly. "It's not uncommon, but we'll want to watch it." Lavern's eyes widened with fear. "Is she okay? Is something wrong?" "She's just letting us know she's ready to meet you," Susan said, her voice steady. "But we're going to give her a little extra oxygen just to be safe." She placed an oxygen mask over Lavern's face. "Just breathe normally. This will help both you and your daughter." The next few minutes were tense. Kim watched the numbers on the monitor, not fully understanding what they meant but knowing that the steady drop wasn't good. Dr. Chen moved with calm efficiency, adjusting Lavern's position, checking readings. "Let's try turning onto your left side," Susan suggested, already helping Lavern move. The simple change worked. The baby's heart rate began to climb back to normal levels. Everyone in the room seemed to exhale at once. "Good girl," Susan said softly, and it wasn't clear if she was talking to Lavern or the baby. Dr. Chen nodded, satisfied. "Heart rate is back to normal. But I think we should get ready to deliver soon. This little one seems eager to arrive." Between contractions, there were moments of calm. In those moments, Kim and Lavern talked. Not about the hospital or Dr. Vance or what had happened. but about the future. About the baby that was about to change their lives forever. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner," Kim said quietly, stroking Lavern's hair back from her damp forehead. "You're here now," she replied. "That's all that matters." "I made the wrong choice," he insisted. "I put business before family. I won't make that mistake again." Lavern squeezed his hand. "I know." They fell silent as Susan checked the monitors again. When she stepped away to speak with Dr. Chin, Kim leaned closer to Lavern. "I want to be different," he said, his voice so low only she could hear. "For her. For our daughter." "Different how?" Lavern asked, though she already knew. "The business. The life I've built. The things I've done." He looked down at their joined hands. "I don't want her to grow up afraid of her father. I don't want her to grow up seeing what I do. Who I have to be." It was the most vulnerable Kim had ever been. Even with Lavern, he rarely spoke about his feelings. About his fears. "My father," he continued, still not meeting her eyes, "was a hard man. Cold. Violent. I swore I'd never be like him. But sometimes I worry that I'm more like him than I want to admit." "Kim," Lavern said softly. "Look at me." He did. "The fact that you're worried about it means you won't be like him. Good fathers worry. They care. They try to be better." Another contraction interrupted them. This one even stronger than before. When it passed, Susan came back to check Lavern again. "Getting close," she said with a smile. "You're doing beautifully." Kim excused himself to use the bathroom and change into the dry scrubs Susan had given him. When he returned, he found the nurse sitting beside Lavern, talking quietly. "Doesn't show it much," Lavern was saying. "But he's scared too." "Most new fathers are," Susan replied. "Even the tough ones. Maybe especially the tough ones." "He's a good man," Lavern said. "Despite what people say about him. Despite what he sometimes has to do." Susan patted her hand. "I believe you. And you know what? The way he looks at you, that's how my husband looked at me for 42 years before he passed. That's the real thing." Kim cleared his throat softly, and both women looked up. Lavern smiled at him, a tired but genuine smile that warmed something deep in his chest. "Welcome back," Susan said. "You're just in time. Let's check our progress." Dr. Chin joined them, examining Lavern carefully. 10 centimeters, she announced. "Perfect. And the baby's heart rate is strong and steady." Susan adjusted the bed, positioning Lavern for delivery. She moved with the confidence of someone who had done this thousands of times, yet she treated Lavern like she was the only patient who mattered. "Mr. Kim, you'll want to stand here," she directed, showing him where to position himself to support Lavern. "You can hold her hand, help her sit up during pushes." Kim nodded, taking his place. For the first time in his life, he was following someone else's orders without question. Because Susan radiated something he respected more than power or money or influence. She radiated competence. Compassion. Care. "When the next contraction comes," Dr. Chin explained, "I'll tell you to push. You'll push for 10 seconds, then rest, then push again. Susan will count for you." Lavern nodded, her face set with determination despite her exhaustion. They didn't have to wait long. Another contraction built, and Susan called out, "Here it comes. Get ready." Dr. Chin checked the monitors and nodded. "Mrs. Kim," she said with a small smile. "It's time to push." Lavern gripped Kim's hand so hard he thought his bones might crack. But he didn't pull away. He couldn't. He wouldn't. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Kim admitted. "But we're scared together." And together, we can do anything. Lavern nodded. Took a deep breath. The next 30 minutes would change their lives forever. Push. Dr. Chen's voice was calm but firm. Lavern squeezed Kim's hand so hard he could feel his bones grinding together. Her face was red with effort, sweat streaming down her temples. She had been pushing for 20 minutes now, and exhaustion showed in every line of her body. I can't, she gasped when the contraction ended. I can't do this anymore. Yes, you can, Susan said, wiping Lavern's forehead with a cool cloth. You're stronger than you think. Your baby is almost here. Kim had never felt so helpless. He had spent his life solving problems, removing obstacles, making things happen. But here, now, all he could do was watch as Lavern fought the hardest battle of her life. You can do this, he whispered, pressing his forehead against hers. You're the strongest person I know. Lavern looked up at him, her eyes tired but determined. She nodded once. Here comes another one, Dr. Chen warned, watching the monitor. Get ready. Lavern took a deep breath as the contraction built. Her face set with fierce concentration. Push. Dr. Chen called. 1, 2, 3. Susan counted to 10 as Lavern pushed with everything she had. Kim supported her, holding her up, murmuring encouragement in a mixture of English and Korean. I can see the head. Dr. Chen announced. She has hair, lots of it. Lavern fell back against the pillows as the contraction ended, breathing hard. One more big push should do it, Dr. Chen said. She's right there, Lavern. Your daughter is almost here. You hear that? Kim said softly. One more push. You've done the hard part already. Lavern nodded, too exhausted to speak. She was gathering her strength for the final effort. Here it comes, Susan warned, watching the monitor. The big one. Lavern gripped Kim's hand again as the contraction built. This time, she didn't wait for instructions. She bore down with everything she had left, her face twisted with determination. Push. Dr. Chen encouraged. That's it, keep going. 7, 8, 9. Susan counted. And then, suddenly, it happened. A tiny body slipped into the world, into Dr. Chen's waiting hands. For one heart-stopping moment, there was silence. Then a cry filled the room. Loud, angry, strong. The sound of new life demanding to be heard. She's here. Dr. Chen announced, her voice warm with joy. She's perfect. Kim felt his legs go weak beneath him. He had seen many things in his life, some beautiful, some terrible, but nothing like this. Nothing like watching his daughter take her first breath. Nothing like hearing her voice for the first time. The nurses quickly cleaned and wrapped the baby in a soft blanket. Then, with gentle hands, they placed her on Lavern's chest. Oh, Lavern breathed, her exhaustion forgotten as she gazed down at the tiny face. Oh, look at you. The baby squirmed, her little hands waving, her face scrunched up like she was already trying to figure out this bright, loud world she'd been thrust into. Her skin was a beautiful blend of her parents', a warm honey brown that glowed under the soft lights. Kim couldn't speak. He just stared at this tiny person they had made. At her perfect fingers, each one smaller than a grain of rice. At her dark hair, still damp and curling slightly. At her eyes, blinking open for the first time, dark and wondering. She has your eyes, Lavern whispered, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, this time. And your stubborn chin. Kim reached out with a trembling hand to touch his daughter's cheek. It was softer than anything he had ever felt. When his finger brushed against her tiny palm, she grabbed it, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so small. Something broke open inside him. Something hard and carefully guarded that he had carried for so long he'd forgotten it was there. In its place rushed feelings he had no names for: fierce protectiveness, overwhelming love, humbling gratitude. Nari, Lavern whispered, her voice thick with happy tears. Her name is Nari. It means lily in Korean, Kim explained to Susan, who was smiling through her own tears. And her middle name is Grace, Lavern added. Because after everything that happened tonight, she's proof that Grace still exists in this world. Nari Grace Kim. Their miracle. The next hour passed in a blur of first moments. Dr. Chen and the nurses checked Nari thoroughly, making sure she was healthy. She weighed 7 pounds exactly. Her lungs were strong, as everyone in the room could attest. Her reflexes were perfect. She's a healthy, beautiful baby girl, Dr. Chen announced officially. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. Dad. The word hit Kim like a physical blow. He was a father now. Responsible for this tiny life. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. While the nurses helped Lavern clean up and rest, Kim got to hold his daughter properly for the first time. Susan showed him how to support her head, how to cradle her small body against his chest. Don't worry, she said with a smile when she saw his nervous expression. Babies are tougher than they look. And fathers figure it out quickly. Nari fit perfectly in Kim's arms, as if she had been made to be there. In a way, he supposed she had been. Her little hand escaped the blanket and grabbed his finger again. Her eyes, still unfocused, seemed to look straight into his soul. Kim walked slowly to the window, careful not to disturb her. The rain had finally stopped. The first pale light of dawn was breaking over the Manhattan skyline, turning the wet streets into rivers of gold. This is your city, he whispered to his daughter. But it's going to be better for you than it was for me. I promise. As he stood there, holding Nari and watching the sunrise, Kim felt something changing inside him. Shifting and realigning. Everything he had built, everything he had fought for, everything he had become, it all looked different now. Smaller in some ways, larger in others. Because now there was Nari. And she changed everything. Kim looked down at his daughter, at her perfect face, her impossibly small fingers, her peaceful expression, and made a silent vow. He would be worthy of her. He would build a world where she would never know fear, never know cruelty, never know the darkness that had shaped his life. He didn't know if he could do it. He didn't know if he was capable of becoming the man she deserved. But looking at her face, he knew he would spend the rest of his life trying. Lavern woke up an hour later. The room was quiet now. Dr. Chen had gone to check on other patients. Only Susan remained, writing notes in a chart by the light of a small lamp. Kim. Lavern called softly. He was at her side immediately, Nari still cradled in his arms. I'm here. Is she okay? Lavern asked, reaching for their daughter. Perfect, Kim assured her, carefully transferring Nari to her mother's arms. She's been sleeping. Lavern's whole face softened as she looked down at their baby. She's so beautiful, she whispered. I still can't believe she's really here. After everything that happened, it does feel like a miracle, Kim agreed. They sat together in comfortable silence, just watching Nari sleep. Outside, the city was waking up. The soft golden light of morning filled the room, washing away the harsh memories of the night before. I never thought I could love someone I just met so much, Lavern said finally. Kim smiled. I felt the same way when I met you. Lavern laughed softly, careful not to disturb the baby. Smooth talker. It's true, Kim insisted. When I saw you at that gallery opening, arguing with that critic about the meaning of that weird painting. It wasn't weird, it was abstract expressionism. I knew my life had changed. I just didn't know how much. Lavern leaned her head against his shoulder. And now look at us. A family. A family. The word filled Kim with equal parts joy and terror. His own family had been complicated. His father cold and distant, his mother trying her best but always afraid. He had few happy memories from his childhood. Few examples of what a good father should be. But he would learn. For Nari, he would learn. Susan approached the bed, her shift clearly ending. She looked tired but satisfied, the way people do when they've done important work well. "I'll be heading home now," she said. "Dr. Chen will check in later, and the day shift nurse will be here soon. Her name is May, and she's excellent." "Thank you," Lavern said warmly. "For everything." "Just doing my job," Susan replied, but her smile was genuine. She turned to leave, then stopped and returned to her station. From her locker, she pulled out a small package wrapped in tissue paper. "I almost forgot," she said, bringing it to Lavern. "I was going to give this to my niece, but I think your little one should have it." Lavern unwrapped the package to find a beautiful hand-knitted baby blanket in soft shades of lavender and cream. "Did you make this?" she asked, touched by the gift. Susan nodded. "Knitting keeps me sane during night shifts. It's not much, but it should keep her warm this winter." "It's beautiful," Lavern said. "Thank you." Kim stood up. "Miss Park," he said formally. "I owe you a great deal." Susan shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Kim. I was just doing what any good nurse would do." "No," Kim insisted. "You did more than that. You showed kindness when others showed cruelty. You showed respect when others showed dismissal." He hesitated, then added, "If there's ever anything you need, anything at all, you only have to ask." It was a significant offer from a man like Kim, and Susan seemed to understand its weight. She nodded once, accepting it without either false modesty or eagerness. "Take care of them," she said simply. "That's all I ask." "I will," Kim promised. After Susan left, the room felt peaceful. Lavern fed Nari for the first time, a moment so intimate and beautiful that Kim found himself turning away, feeling like an intruder. "It's okay," Lavern said softly. "You can look. She's your daughter too." Kim sat beside them, watching the miracle of his wife nurturing their child. When Nari finished eating, she fell asleep almost immediately, her tiny face relaxed and satisfied. Lavern's eyes were growing heavy too. The exhaustion of labor was finally catching up to her. "Sleep," Kim urged, taking Nari and placing her in the bassinet beside the bed. "You've earned it." Lavern didn't argue. She was asleep within minutes, her breathing deep and even. Kim stood between the two beds, looking from his sleeping wife to his sleeping daughter, feeling a peace he had never known before. Outside, New York City was fully awake now. The sun had risen, turning the wet streets into mirrors reflecting the clear blue sky. The storm had passed. A new day had begun. Kim walked to the window, looking out at the city that had been his battlefield and kingdom for so long. It looked different now. Everything looked different. As he stood there, lost in thought, there was a soft knock at the door. Kim turned, expecting to see the day nurse Susan had mentioned. Instead, two uniformed police officers stood in the corridor. Behind them was a man in plain clothes, with sharp eyes and a notebook. "Mr. Kim," the man said, showing a badge. "I'm Detective Marcus Cole. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight." Kim looked back at Lavern, still sleeping peacefully. At Nari, making tiny sounds in her bassinet. Then he stepped into the corridor and closed the door behind him. "Detective," he said. "Let me tell you exactly what happened." The hallway outside room 404 was quiet. Most of the VIP maternity wing was still asleep, unaware of the drama that had unfolded during the night. Kim stood with Detective Marcus Cole and two uniformed officers, his face composed despite his exhaustion. "Start from the beginning, Mr. Kim," Detective Cole said, flipping open his notebook. "In your own words." Kim nodded, his voice steady and calm as he recounted what had happened. He described arriving at the hospital to find Dr. Vance striking Lavern. He detailed the red mark on her cheek, the tears in her eyes, the doctor's dismissive attitude. "My wife told me that Dr. Vance had been ignoring her concerns for hours," Kim explained. "When she tried to insist something was wrong with her labor, he became angry and hit her." "And what did you do when you witnessed this?" Cole asked, watching Kim's face carefully. "I ensured he was removed from her care," Kim said simply. "I contacted the hospital administrator. I requested a new doctor." "That's all?" Cole's eyebrows rose slightly. "I also made some phone calls regarding Dr. Vance's financial situation and his position at the hospital," Kim admitted. "But I did not touch him. I did not threaten him with physical harm." Cole wrote something in his notebook. "The nurses who were in the room confirm your account. They say Dr. Vance struck your wife when she grabbed his sleeve during a contraction." "Yes. And they also say you remained perfectly calm. That you didn't raise your voice or make any threatening moves toward Dr. Vance." "That's correct." Detective Cole studied Kim for a long moment. "I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Kim," he said carefully. "I expected this conversation to go differently." "How so?" "Men in your position usually handle things privately. They don't call the police." Kim's expression didn't change. "I have a daughter now, Detective. I want her to grow up in a world where justice means something. Where people can't abuse their power without facing consequences. If I handle this outside the law, what lesson does that teach her?" Cole nodded slowly, seeming to reassess the man standing before him. "We've been looking into Dr. Vance's background," he said, closing his notebook. "This wasn't his first incident." Kim's eyes narrowed slightly. "Go on." "There have been complaints over the years. Mostly from women of color. Mostly immigrants or those he perceived as vulnerable. Nothing this serious before, no physical assault that we know of, but a pattern of dismissal, rudeness, ignoring symptoms. And these complaints were ignored," Kim said. "It wasn't a question." "Buried," Cole confirmed. "Handled internally. The hospital has a system that protects doctors like Vance. Prestigious names bring in money, and money keeps hospitals running." Kim's jaw tightened, the only visible sign of his anger. "We'll be pursuing assault charges," Cole continued. "With your wife's testimony and the nurses as witnesses, it's a solid case." "Would Mrs. Kim be willing to make a statement once she's recovered?" "Yes," Kim said without hesitation. "She'll want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." As if on cue, the elevator doors opened, and Mr. Brennan hurried down the hallway toward them. The hospital administrator looked like he hadn't slept, his tie askew, his eyes bloodshot. "Mr. Kim," he said, slightly out of breath. "I've been looking for you. I wanted to update you on the actions we've taken." He noticed the police officers and paled slightly. "Mr. Brennan," Detective Cole said with a nod. "Good timing. We were just discussing Dr. Vance's history at this hospital." Brennan swallowed hard. "We're conducting a full internal investigation. Dr. Vance has been suspended pending dash." "Suspended?" Kim interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "Not terminated. There are procedures we have to follow," Brennan said weakly. "Legal considerations. But I want to assure you, Mr. Kim, that we take this incident extremely seriously. We're prepared to offer full compensation for any dash." "I don't want your money," Kim cut him off. "What I want is change." "Change?" Brennan repeated, confused. "This hospital failed my wife," Kim said. Not just because of Dr. Vance, but because the system is designed to protect him, not patients. How many complaints were ignored? How many women weren't believed? How many people suffered because they didn't have the power or connections to fight back? Brennan had no answer. Here's what's going to happen, Kim continued. You're going to implement a completely new patient protection system. Anonymous reporting. Regular audits by outside agencies. Training for all staff on implicit bias and cultural sensitivity. And a patient advocate position, someone whose only job is to make sure patients are heard and treated with respect. Mr. Kim, that's a significant undertaking. This isn't about me or my wife, Kim said. It's about the patient who comes after her. The one who doesn't have money or connections. The one who can't fight back. Build a system that protects them, or I'll make sure this hospital never recovers from what happened here tonight. The threat hung in the air, quiet but unmistakable. I'll take these suggestions to the board immediately, Brennan said. They're not suggestions, Kim replied. And I'll be following up. Personally. Brennan nodded quickly and retreated back toward the elevator, already pulling out his phone. Detective Cole watched him go, then turned back to Kim with something like respect in his eyes. That was unexpected, he said. Most people in your position would just sue for millions and be done with it. Money doesn't solve problems, Kim said. It just hides them. True enough, Cole agreed. We'll need a formal statement from your wife in the next few days, but it can wait until she's recovered. Here's my card. Kim took it with a nod of thanks. Congratulations on your daughter, Cole added as he turned to leave. What's her name? Nari, Kim said, and for the first time since the conversation began, his face softened. Nari Grace Kim. Beautiful name, Cole said. I hope she grows up in that better world you're fighting for. After the police left, Kim stood alone in the hallway for a moment, gathering his thoughts before returning to room 404. The events of the night were catching up to him, the confrontation with Dr. Vance, the birth of Nari, the decisions he had made. He felt drained but clear-headed. More certain of his path than he had been in years. When he opened the door, he found Lavern awake, sitting up in bed and cradling Nari. The sight of them together still took his breath away. Hey, she said softly. Where did you go? The police were here, Kim explained, coming to sit beside her. They're investigating Dr. Vance. They'll press charges? Yes. With the nurse's statements and yours, he'll likely face assault charges. His medical license will be reviewed. Lavern nodded, looking down at their sleeping daughter. Good. He shouldn't be allowed to treat patients. The detective said there have been other complaints over the years, Kim added. All ignored. Anger flashed in Lavern's tired eyes. Of course there were. Let me guess, mostly women who looked like me? Yes. And the hospital administrator? What did he have to say for himself? He offered money, Kim said with a slight shrug. I told him I wanted change instead. Lavern looked up at him, surprised. What kind of change? Kim explained the demands he had made, the new reporting systems, the training, the patient advocates. As he spoke, Lavern's expression changed from surprise to something warmer, deeper. You're serious about this, she said when he finished. About making real changes, not just punishing one bad doctor. I am. Lavern studied his face for a moment. You know what I just realized? In all the time I've known you, I've seen you use your power to protect yourself, your business, your people. But this is the first time I've seen you use it to protect strangers. People you'll never meet. Kim hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. Everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, had been about survival. About control. About building walls against a hostile world. This was different. It matters to me now, he said simply. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just watching Nari sleep. Her tiny chest rising and falling, her perfect fingers occasionally twitching as she dreamed baby dreams. You didn't hurt him, Lavern said finally. It wasn't a question. No. You could have. Part of you wanted to. I saw it in your eyes. Kim sat beside her bed, took her hand. Yes. Part of me wanted to destroy him with my bare hands. But that's not who I want to be anymore. That's not who our daughter's father should be. Lavern squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you. 3 words. But they meant more to Kim than any victory he'd ever achieved. When I saw him hit you, Kim said, his voice low, something inside me wanted to tear him apart. The old me would have. The old me wouldn't have hesitated. What stopped you? Kim looked at Nari. Her. The moment I knew she was coming, I started thinking about the man I wanted to be when she arrived. The father I wanted her to have. Not someone who solves problems with violence. Not someone who lives by fear and control. And who do you want to be instead? Lavern asked gently. Kim was quiet for a long moment, considering. Someone who builds instead of destroys, he said finally. Someone who protects the weak instead of exploiting them. Someone who uses power to make things better, not just to win. That sounds like a good man to me, Lavern said, smiling through sudden tears. A good father. Kim looked at his wife and daughter, at the family he would do anything to protect, and made a decision. When we leave here, he said quietly, things are going to be different. I'm going to be different. What do you mean? I mean I've spent my whole life building power. Accumulating influence. Preparing for enemies. He looked at Nari's sleeping face. Now I want to build something else. Something that matters. Something she can be proud of. Lavern smiled. That sounds like a lot of work. It will be, Kim admitted. But I won't be doing it alone. Will I? Lavern laced her fingers through his. Never, she promised. Never alone again. 3 days later, the sun was shining through the windows of room 404. No trace remained of the storm or the drama from that night. The flowers on the windowsill were fresh. The room was filled with soft morning light. And Kim was packing the last of Lavern's things into a small overnight bag. Ready to go home? He asked, zipping the bag closed. Lavern nodded, cradling Nari against her chest. The baby was wrapped in the lavender blankets Susan had given them, sound asleep after her morning feeding. More than ready, Lavern said. As nice as everyone's been, I'm tired of hospital noises and hospital smells. There was a light knock on the door, and a nurse entered with a wheelchair. Your chariot awaits, Mrs. Kim, she said with a smile. Hospital policy, I'm afraid. Everyone leaves in a wheelchair, even if they feel fine. Lavern carefully settled into the chair, adjusting Nari in her arms. Kim slung the bag over his shoulder and nodded to the nurse. We're all set. As they made their way through the maternity wing, something strange happened. The staff, nurses, doctors, orderlies, lined the hallway. Not in a formal way, but they paused in their duties, smiling and nodding as the little family passed. Congratulations. She's beautiful. Take care of that little one. Kim watched it all with mild surprise. These were the same people who had been afraid to make eye contact with him 3 days ago. Now they were smiling, waving, genuinely happy for his family. It wasn't just about Nari, though she was certainly part of it. It was also about the changes that had already begun at Mount Sinai. The hospital administrator had taken Kim's demands seriously. New policies were being drafted. A patient advocacy office was being established. Dr. Vance's case was being used as a teaching example of what would no longer be tolerated. Word had spread quickly through the hospital staff. Kim Hae-jin wasn't just the feared chairman of the Jeomryung network. He was also a man who fought for change. For justice. For a better system. As they approached the elevator, Kim spotted a familiar figure waiting for them. Susan Park, in street clothes instead of scrubs, her silver-streaked hair loose around her shoulders. "I hoped I'd catch you before you left," she said, her kind eyes crinkling with her smile. "I wanted to see this little one off properly." She leaned down to peek at Nari's sleeping face. "Look at her. Perfect in every way." "We wouldn't have gotten through that night without you," Lavern said softly. Susan waved away the thanks. "You would have. You're stronger than you know." She adjusted the blanket around Nari, tucking it more securely. "You're going to do just fine. Trust your instincts. They're better than you think." She turned to Kim. "And you? Remember that being a good father isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. About trying. About showing up, even when it's hard." "I'll remember," Kim said. And he meant it. Susan smiled, seeming to understand the weight of his promise. "Good. Now go home and start your life together. The real adventure is just beginning." The elevator doors opened, and they said their goodbyes. As they descended to the ground floor, Lavern looked up at Kim. "I like her," she said simply. "So do I," Kim agreed. Min Seo was waiting with the car at the hospital's VIP exit. His face broke into a rare smile when he saw them approaching with the baby. "Mrs. Kim, congratulations," he said, holding the door open. "And welcome to the world, little Miss Kim." Kim helped Lavern into the back seat, then carefully secured Nari's car seat, a task he had practiced multiple times over the past 3 days. Hospitals didn't let you leave with a newborn unless you could prove you knew how to use a car seat properly. Even Kim Hae-jin, with all his power and influence, had to demonstrate he could buckle his daughter in correctly. Once they were settled, Min Seo pulled away from the hospital and into the Manhattan traffic. Kim sat in the front passenger seat, looking back frequently to check on Lavern and Nari. "Take the scenic route," he instructed Min Seo. "Through the park." Min Seo nodded, understanding. The direct route home would be faster, but it would also take them through busier streets. The park would be quieter. More peaceful for a newborn's first journey. As they drove, Kim found himself seeing the city differently. Streets he'd traveled 1,000 times looked new. Familiar buildings cast unfamiliar shadows. Every corner, every intersection, every pedestrian crossing seemed to hold both potential danger and potential beauty. He was seeing New York through new eyes. Through a father's eyes. Through Nari's future eyes. This was the city his daughter would grow up in. These streets would become her playground. These buildings would form the skyline of her childhood. And he was responsible for making sure her experience of this place was better than his had been. The weight of that responsibility should have felt crushing. But somehow, it didn't. It felt right. Like the missing piece he hadn't known he was looking for. Beside him, Min Seo drove carefully, taking turns more gently than usual, stopping well before each red light. The man had been Kim's driver for 8 years, through gunfights and high-speed chases and midnight escapes. Now he was driving like there was precious cargo in the back seat. Because there was. Kim glanced back again. Lavern had fallen asleep, her head resting against the window, exhausted from the past few days. Nari was awake in her car seat, her dark eyes staring up at the roof of the car, fascinated by the patterns of light moving across it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again. And again. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. 27 missed calls. 42 text messages. Most from Park Young-ho or his associates. The business deal that had been interrupted. The meeting he had walked out of. 3 days ago, those calls would have been his highest priority. His entire focus. The deal with Park was worth millions. The potential alliance could have changed the balance of power in the city. Kim turned the phone off. For the first time in 20 years, the business could wait. His family couldn't. They arrived at their building on Central Park West 30 minutes later. The doorman rushed to help them, holding doors, carrying bags, beaming at the baby. "Congratulations, Mr. Kim, Mrs. Kim," he said. "Everyone's been waiting for you to bring her home." The private elevator took them straight to their penthouse on the top floor. When the doors opened, Kim felt a moment of pride as Lavern gasped in surprise. The entire apartment had been transformed. Fresh flowers, lilies, Lavern's favorite, filled every room. Soft music was playing. The harsh overhead lights had been replaced with warmer lamps. Everything looked softer, more welcoming. "Kim," Lavern breathed. "When did you do all this?" "I made some calls," he said with a small smile. "While you were sleeping." He led her through the apartment, Nari still cradled in her arms. Everything had been prepared for their arrival, the fridge stocked with meals that could be easily reheated, the bedroom turned into a peaceful retreat, the living room rearranged to be more comfortable for a recovering mother. But he had saved the best for last. "Close your eyes," he said when they reached the door at the end of the hallway. "Kim. Please. Just for a moment." Lavern smiled and closed her eyes. Kim opened the door and guided her inside. "Okay. You can look now." Lavern gasped when she saw the nursery. Kim had been working on it for months, sneaking away to supervise, refusing to let her see it until it was perfect. Soft lavender walls. A crib made of reclaimed oak. Shelves lined with books in both English and Korean. A rocking chair by the window overlooking the park. "Kim," Lavern whispered, tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful." "I wanted her to have something beautiful," he said. "Something pure. Something that proves that the world can be good." Lavern wrapped her free arm around him, careful not to jostle Nari. "She already has that," she said. "She has us." The rest of the day passed in a peaceful blur. They settled into a tentative routine, feeding Nari, changing her, watching in amazement as she slept. Lavern napped when the baby napped, still recovering from the birth. Kim handled everything else, surprising himself with how quickly he adapted to caring for such a tiny person. By evening, a new kind of quiet had settled over the penthouse. Not the tense silence Kim was used to, the kind that came before violence or danger, but a peaceful quiet. A safe quiet. After Lavern fed Nari and went to bed, Kim found himself drawn to the balcony. The same balcony where he had made so many important business calls. Where he had planned strategies and alliances and sometimes, when necessary, retribution. Now he stood there alone, looking out at the city lights. Millions of tiny stars spread across the darkness. The Empire State Building glowed blue in the distance. Cars moved along the streets below like slow-motion rivers of light. Kim had spent his entire adult life learning to be hard. To be calculating. To put power above everything else. It had kept him alive. It had made him wealthy. It had built an empire that men feared. But tonight, having held his daughter, having watched his wife sleep, he understood something he'd never understood before. None of it mattered without them. The money. The influence. The fear he inspired. It was all noise. Distractions from what was real. What was real was a 7-pound baby with her mother's eyes. A woman who had seen his darkness and loved him anyway. A family that needed him to be better than he'd ever been. Kim looked out at the city, at the world he would have to navigate, the dangers he would have to face, the changes he would have to make. It wouldn't be easy. He had enemies. He had a history. He had patterns carved so deep into his soul that he wasn't sure they could ever be erased. But looking back at that nursery, at the small, perfect life depending on him, Kim made a choice. He would try. Every day, he would try. And maybe, if he tried hard enough and long enough, he would become the man his daughter deserved. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Park Young-ho, still trying to reach him. Still angry about the meeting. Still demanding an explanation. Kim turned it off again and went back inside. As he passed the master bedroom, he paused to look in on Lavern. She was sound asleep, one hand stretched out across his side of the bed, as if reaching for him even in her dreams. He continued to the nursery, drawn by some instinct he didn't fully understand yet. Nari was awake. Not crying, just making the small sounds newborns make when they're exploring the strange new world they've entered. Her eyes, still unfocused, seemed to track his movement as he approached the crib. Kim picked her up carefully, supporting her head the way Susan had shown him. She felt impossibly light in his arms. Impossibly fragile. And yet somehow stronger than anything he had ever known. "Hello, little one," he whispered. Nari made a tiny sound in response, almost like she recognized his voice. Like she knew who he was. Kim walked her to the window, where the city lights painted patterns across the nursery floor. "I don't know what kind of world you're going to grow up in," he whispered to his daughter. "I don't know what challenges you'll face or what enemies you'll make or what choices will be put in front of you." He walked to the window, showing her the city lights, thousands of tiny stars spread across the darkness. "But I promise you this, I will spend every day of my life making sure you never have to feel the way your mother felt in that hospital. I will build systems that protect people like her. I will use everything I have, every bit of power, every connection, every resource, to make this world a little bit safer for you." Nari yawned. Her tiny hand reached up and touched his chin. "And when you're older, when you understand what your father used to be, I hope you'll also understand what he tried to become." He kissed her forehead. "I hope you'll be proud of me." Behind him, Lavern appeared in the doorway. She didn't say anything. She just walked over, wrapped her arms around both of them, and held on. The three of them stood there in the nursery, the Mafia boss, the art curator, and their newborn miracle, and for the first time in a very long time, everything was exactly as it should be. And that's where we'll leave them. Not at an ending, but at a beginning. A family born from crisis, tested by cruelty, and forged in the kind of love that changes everything. Look, if this story moved you, if you felt something watching a man choose justice over violence, a woman show strength in her most vulnerable moment, a family prove that redemption is possible, then you're exactly the kind of person we make these stories for. We pour our hearts into every single video. And the only way we know you want more is if you hit that subscribe button. So if you haven't already, do it now. Join this community of people who believe in stories that matter. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tell me what moment hit you the hardest. Tell me if you cried, I won't judge. I almost cried writing it. And until next time, remember, real strength isn't about power. It's about what you do with it. It's about protecting the people who need protecting. It's about having the courage to change. See you in the next story.